Hello, you wonderful people, and welcome to another episode of Not Too Comic Book. This being a show where I talk about TV shows that are adaptations of comic books. For today's episode, I'm going to talk about Your Friendly Neighborhood Spider-Man Season 1, Episode 7. Great episode. A lot of really interesting things went down in this episode, so let's break it down. So, obviously, we're picking up in the aftermath of last episode where Peter's trying to do what he can to repair things with Nico, and she wants nothing to do with him right now. Understandably so. She's hurt and she's pissed. And it's interesting that the person he sits down and talks to is Pearl, who's like, oh, like you two are like the dynamic duo, like what's going on your front? And he's like, I messed things up and I don't know how to fix it, which Pearl is the perfect person to talk to because she's trying to figure things out with Lonnie. She knows something's going on and he's not telling her, which Pete also understands because, he's in that same boat. It's like, well, he's probably not telling you whatever it is because he wants to try and protect you. But she brings up the point. It's like, yeah, but that's my choice. Like, he shouldn't make that choice for me. That choice should be mine. And I'm sure that it gives Peter a lot to think about when it comes to the Nico thing. It's like, I should have, regardless of, yes, I was trying to protect her. I didn't tell Aunt May and I didn't tell Nico. So I wonder, does she not know that May doesn't know either? It's still the thing of, like, she's not trying to put herself above, like, yo, oh my God, you didn't tell me. But it's like, I didn't tell me. It's like, that doesn't matter. It's not like that. It's just a situation. Once again, this is like his best friend. She even says later, like, Peter's like a brother to me. And so for him not to tell me something so crucial and important, it breaks our heart. It hurts, especially because she feels like she got abandoned by so many people that were close to her. That's why I feel like for her to be in a foster system, it probably does stem from the fact is that, like, it's either like she felt like she got left behind. So either that is like, or either her parents did give her up for adoption and left her, or they did die. And just either way, it's the thing of feeling like people are leaving you behind. And that's why she's been holding on so tightly and so worried about losing Peter. He's the first person she's probably latched onto and felt like, yo, like, but now he's leaving me behind for friends and stuff, So it's a lot of things, and it puts things a lot, I guess, in perspective for Peter, because Pearl is looking at it like maybe I'm the problem. And I'm sure Nico might be feeling on some level. It's like that you can't even trust me, your best friend, like with your biggest secret. Like, what does that say about me? Like, is that an indictment against me and my character? And Pearl's kind of feeling that way, but Peter's like, no, you're amazing. I know that Lonnie knows that, But he's like, yo, if you need anything, I'm always like a text away. And for her, it's just like, don't ever change Peter. And it's like, he doesn't, That's always a beautiful thing. About, yes, he has moments where he does, changes for the better to grow as he gets older. But it's also like Peter's still Peter at the end of the day. Even being Spider-Man doesn't change, because that's the whole thing. Great power, great responsibility. But you also have to very much in the same Steve Rogers thing of even become a super soldier did not change him, because it amplifies who's already there, what's already there in your heart. And Peter's being Spider-Man just amplified what was already there. It just made him hold this greater responsibility, and he feels a responsibility for the people he cares about. Even Harry says it later on to Nico, the same thing that Peter had said to Norman in episode 3 of like, don't let May know. And even why he was like, I don't want you or Oscorp involved, because he's like, me, I decided to take up this burden. I decided to be a hero, and my life being at stake is fine, but I won't let other people get caught up in it. The same reason why he didn't tell Nico, the same reason why he didn't tell May. He knew they both worry about him, but he also knew, like, my situation is my situation. I don't ever want them to put themselves in danger for me, so. And speaking of Nico, Harry tries to kind of on Peter's behalf, like, reach out to Nico, and she obviously, it leads to this back and forth between them, because Nico has her preconceived notions about Harry because of his upbringing, because she's like, you will never understand what I'm going through. But for him, it's like, yes, like, none of the relationships in my life are real. Peter's the first real friend I've had in a long time. First person who doesn't want me for my family name or my clout or likes or whatever. Like, a person who's we genuinely hit it off. He even says, like, yo, it's not like Peter brought me on Team Spider-Man willingly. It just happened to be in the right place at the right time. And for her, for Nico, that's even more of an indictment. It's like, oh, I guess that's the benefits of being an Osborn. And it's like, yeah, you're the rich and powerful, so they're butting heads, because for him, it's also like, yo, you want to blame me for everything. I'm not the one that kept the secret from you. Yeah, I might have told you, but also it wasn't my position to tell that secret, That's Pete's secret, and I wasn't in no position to do that. So I don't know if Peter and Harry have talked since the end of last episode, but because he also wants to make it's for Peter's sake, but it's also from his own sake because he likes Nico and is like, yo, you are cool, and I kind of want enough for like one of my friends' friend. I would want to be my friend too, and so I thought that was so fascinating because yeah, just I even love it at one point. Nico's like, I'm sorry. He's like, what'd you say? I didn't hear. She's like, I said, nice car. Didn't even want to just, couldn't even muster it up to say it again. But he ends up teaching her how to drive. You know, kind of not the greatest. But then they get challenged to a street race because a lady sees like, oh my God, you're Harry Osborn. And it's like, oh, you're going to take your goth girlfriend. She's going to take you to Hot Topic, and brings up mommy and stuff like that, which is super effed up considering like he is well known enough to be like, well, he's a public figure that you'd have to look into it, but I'm sure it's enough is out there about the Osborns to know like Harry's mom's not alive. So that's kind of an extra dick move. But it's also like, you don't, just because someone's celebrity or famous and influence doesn't mean you know everything there is about their life. You just see their name and stuff like that. Doesn't mean you have their entire biography memorized and stuff, no matter how much of a figure. There's well-known celebrities. Like, I don't like well, let's just use MCU actors, for example. I don't know all there is to know about Robert Downey Jr.'s life and stuff like that, So it's kind of that thing of like, yeah, you might be this big-time celebrity, but that doesn't mean jack squat. So it's just kind of that same situation, but it is kind of sad just hearing that insult. Once again, nothing meant by it, but it just cuts even deeper knowing like, yeah, his mom's not around, which I'm sure that also pissed Nico off too, considering her family situation. So either way, it turns into a street race, which Harry was like, no, let's not do this. But Nico's like, screw that. This lady over here running her mouth. And then and the woman calls her Beetlejuice. And I love the guy named was it Clev? He's like, yo, I'm back at it. It's like, is that the same dude from, that's not the same dude from Homecoming. Or, yo, Spider-Man, do a flip. I don't think it's the same dude. I think that's that actor, if I'm not mistaken. His name is Zach Cherry. Because I looked at the character model, I was like, oh, that looks just like that actor. You've seen him in multiple things. I just Googled him. It is the same dude as like, yo, do a flip, Spider-Man. But I also saw him on a bus situation, which I think he was in Shang-Chi. I think that, like, I haven't seen Shang-Chi since, like 2021, I think. Because I saw it a little before Eternals came out. I know it came out before Eternals came out, but like I saw it like very close to like Eternals release date. But I haven't rewatched it. So I didn't, but I guess he was on the bus scene. Maybe he was kind of doing the same thing that he's doing here. And I love that he's correcting, like, he's like, well, you called her Beetlejuice, but what you're most likely is talking about, you meant to call her Lydia. And then the lady was like, shut up and just count down. And he's like, oh, I got next. And it turns into a race. And Nico ends up winning. And I love when the lady loses. She's like, oh, that's unfair. Lydia decided to correct herself this time, which I thought that was kind of like a funny bit. But yeah, this whole situation did bring Harry and Nico closer together. They bonded because it made her realize, like, right, you're not the person I thought you were, and I had my preconceived notions about you. So it's like, oh, we're good now. But me and Pete, she's like, I don't know if I can forgive that. But Harry tried to smooth things over, because Nico wasn't mad, like, oh my God, like, every time he ditched me, he was off doing a superhero thing. You're mad because he's a hero? It's like, no, it's just, once again, it's just, you're young, your emotions are like, you're pissed off because like you feel like you're lied to by your best friend, and this person that is like, you hid something important to you, which once again, that ends up being I'm so curious to see how people feel about that. I always go back to it. It's like, I keep using it because it ends up being the biggest example of like, I understand where Amber's coming from, and most people don't. Like, most people I've come across have not been fans of Amber from Invincible, like her response, at least TV show wise. That's not how the comic played out. But either way, I think it's a situation of like, man, I understand where she came from, and maybe it just the way I viewed it, I'm like, I totally understand where she's coming from with her frustrations about it. And the same thing in this case, I'm just curious, would Nico catch the same flack? There was another situation recently, I'm trying to remember. Oh yeah, it was something else Invincible related. I was like, oh, I wonder, will that get the same like negative response Amber got for season 1, whether or not this character would get the same response. Either way. So I'm curious, would people feel that same way? Once again, I'm not going to blame Nico for feeling it. Once again, you're just young, you're frustrated, and even she corrects herself by being like, it's not even about him being a hero. Like, I get it, he wants to help people. It's just, I don't like being lied to, and I just feel like I'm being left behind by my best friend, like I said, who's like a brother to me. So I am curious because they were like, yo, we're friends now and stuff, so they're pretty cool. And Harry's like, yo, I want to be one of your friends. I was curious to see if like, will they, once again, I don't know if like Nico's like straight up like I think someone had said like yeah in the comics she is gay. So once again I know her from Runaways where she ends up with Carolina, but I don't. But once again I know Alex liked her, and I think she might have liked Alex too. I think they dated, or at least like I think nothing ever. Once again it's been so long, so that's why I was like I don't know if Nico's bi, because I was about to say like are they going to set this up, because that ended up being using Spectacular Spider-Man for example. Like, because that was a whole, like, complicated thing where, like, Gwen liked Peter, but Peter was completely unaware of how Gwen felt about him, and things kind of got complicated as the series progressed, and I think Harry liked Gwen, and I think they even started kind of dating a little bit, if I'm not mistaken, especially, like, by the end of the series, because obviously the series got canceled. They didn't get to conclude its story fully, but, yeah, I'm curious about that, in the grand scheme of things. I was wondering for a second, like, were they setting that up? But it's probably not. Probably it's just like, no, we're friends. And, Harry tries to call up Peter, which Peter's going through it this episode because he's got to deal with Mac, who shows up as Scorpion. So it is just a torso with the tail situation. He doesn't have the full suit yet. Because Peter went up to meet up with Norman, and they're trying to track down Osborn, which I love. They like, oh, was it this thing he's using? What about this? What about Solar? It's like, oh, I don't think he's harnessed the power of the sun yet. And I was like, shut up. Once again, I think that's like wink and nod to Spider-Man 2, to Sam Raimi's Spider-Man 2, but I don't know if that's like always tied to Otto in most iterations, or if that's just specifically pulling from. Once again, it's kind of like that line from I'm a bit of a scientist myself. How, once again, that kind of got memed. I wonder if that's kind of the same thing in the capacity, or maybe that is tied to Otto typically. But either way, and I think that speaks volumes about Norman, that we'll get to it in a second, but like the entire time Peter's doing what he's doing, like Norman's so distracted by focusing on Otto. He, like, even though he's like, Otto's so obsessed with me, it's like he is too. Like, he wants to crush Otto because it's like, I guess, like, on some level, he wants to prove he's better than Otto, but also, like, he probably doesn't want anything Otto might have to say to ever come to the surface. Like, maybe most people, like, he might be so disgraced that no one will listen to a thing he said, but maybe he's been outspoken about, like, Norman or something like that, or maybe he signed NDAs and he couldn't say anything legal. I don't know. But it's like, once again, I think Norman probably did screw him over in this continuity, because it's typically, like, how that relationship is. But it's also like Otto's ego of like, I am better than Tony, I'm better than Bruce, I'm better than Norman. That's the one that pisses him off the most. I'm sure Tony and Bruce do, but mainly Norman, because they were contemporaries and they worked at Oscorp together at some point in time. So I don't know. I just think it's so interesting that he's so focused on that, even though it's like, yeah, you want Peter to be a hero, but your obsession with tracking down Otto like consumed you, and like you weren't there for Peter when he needed you. But yeah, you have Pearl, who got in contact. Well, Andre got in contact with Pearl and told her everything. She tracks down the 110th and makes her way over there. You're like, oh crap, she shows up at the wrong time because, you know, Scorpion's on his way, which I know this is like a family-friendly cartoon. I still wasn't expecting it to get as dark as it does. I'm sure the same thing could be said applicable to X-Men 97. I haven't seen it yet, but, you know, handling things in a more mature, darker way. Like, the fact is, Scorpion straight up murked that dude, stabbed him through the body with the tail and everything. You saw his body, like, limp, like, hanging from the tail. You're like, oh, that's brutal. Like, I guess I sometimes underestimate, like, because I think this is considered PG. So, and I think sometimes I underestimate, like, how far a rating can go. Like, sometimes I've talked about in the past, like, I never realized how far a TV-14 can go, you know, sometimes. So, it's kind of that thing of like, oh, I wasn't expecting there to be any blood or anything dark like that. It's like, no, these people aren't just getting knocked around. Some of these people are getting straight up murdered. You know, Lonnie tried to help and ended up getting hurt, but luckily Spider-Man shows up in time, gets them out of there, and he's fighting Scorpion by himself. But it's like, this guy's tails are too strong and he's able to defend anything Peter throws at him, or using the webs. The guy's too strong. And the thing I talked about previously, I was like, I mean, we haven't seen Peter run into the typical Spider-Man issue of running out of web. I made that comment a couple episodes back. Oh, here's a situation where he literally threw everything in the kitchen sink at him because he used every bit of web to web down his tail, web up his body, like hang him from like different points to kind of anchor him in place. But Mac pushed the suit too far because it's like the source that Octavius is using is gamma radiation. It's a source of his tech. And it's like, right, this is a situation where it's overloading. Because even Peter was like, yeah, you don't know what it could do to someone's skin. Which I was like, the moment I thought about the scorpion thing, it's like, well, the whole point was like he got stuck in a suit. Once again, I keep bringing it up with like, I don't know how much of that is me conflating Scorpion story with Rhino, or maybe they do have that like same situation. But I'm like, he doesn't have the rest of the suit, so I wonder, does he get the rest of the suit, eventually push the gamma too far, and it like ends up sticking to him that way, or does the rest of his body kind of mutate from the gamma radiation to be more Scorpion-esque along with the suit? I'm curious how that, like, maybe the rest of his body gets a little more like Scorpion-esque, whereas like where he still has the tech, or is it just like he puts on the tech, he pushes it too far, the gamma radiation sticks the suit to him, so it becomes his own fault and not Jameson's, like I said, if that's not Rhino's situation. But either way, this is one of those instances that kind of just like, it kind of makes you queasy to your stomach, where I'm just kind of getting uneasy. Like Scorpion being on top of Peter and just like punching him, you're just like, there's something, you're just like, oh, that's something brutal about that. Like the one time I think about it, it's like the situation in Homecoming when Peter's stuck under all that rubble. I kind of thought that's where that was going when that steel beam was brought down by Scorpion and Peter caught it. I thought the whole thing was like, you're going to bring this whole place down, and he's going to have a little bit of a Homecoming moment. Kind of does. I mean, that's also another thing, that fight, because the fight with Vulture was brutal, you know? And that's always kind of like that crazy cool but badass moment when like Peter is jacked up the suit. Like I think of the end of Spider-Man 1 when he's fighting Norman and his suit's jacked up. I mean, to be fair, like it's actually interesting because like obviously spoilers, the first Spider-Man, Marvel Spider-Man PS4, like that kind of ends with him, with the particular suit he wears in that instance, getting heavily jacked up. I mean, him getting impaled kind of almost in a similar spot. Kind of same thing, a part of like the mouthpiece to the mask is messed up, one of his eyeball. You know, those are traditional battle damage to the suit type of situation. But like I said, it's the thing I was referencing too with Homecoming is like I will always remember Wooly from formerly of Super Best Friends play, but now like Castle Super Beast, talking about like, it's one of those moments where you're just kind of like, oh, it's Spider-Man doing his thing. And in that moment when he's trapped under the rubble and he's asking for help and he's so alone, it's just like, oh my God, this is a child. It's moments like that. In this moment when he was on top of Peter punching him, where you're just like, oh, that's a teenager. That's like a 15, 16-year-old getting beaten up by a grown man. It just feels like you're just like, it just makes you uneasy. You're just like, moments like that where it's just kind of like, oh yeah, that's a kid. That's a kid under that. Because I also have to think about it too, where you have to, you know, because even using Spider-Verse for example, like in Miles' universe, Peter was in his 20s, if not 30s, when he died. The Peter Parker of that universe, and where Miles becomes Spider-Man. In the Ultimate Comics, Peter dies at 16. Which is like horrendous. I mean, you know, I'm sure things have probably changed. Like at least the original run of the Ultimates, I think there's a different run of the Ultimate Marvel Universe now, because everything kind of ended up collapsing, kind of, you know, Crisis on Infinite Earths-esque situation in Marvel. But yeah, like Peter was like 16. He might have only been Spider-Man for like a year or something in that continuity, if I remember correctly. But I distinctly remember like he died when he was 16, when you're like, ugh. It just kind of brought all that to the forefront watching that. I was like, and he's so alone. He doesn't have any webbing. Like this guy is beating him to a pulp. And like he has no backup. And I was like, what is Norman going to do? I was like, is Norman going to, like when something was flying in, I was like, no way. He's like, is he Green Goblining him? I was like, no. Like, is he vulturing it? But then we see the glider. I'm like, oh, no, it is Green Goblin. So the glider already exists tech-wise. He just hasn't gone full Green Goblin yet. I was like, interesting. So he was able to get Peter out of there. But then Scorpion's just wrecking the whole place as Peter passes out. And just, that's like such a dark note to end the episode on. Like, you know, I mean, because so far Peter's managed to win his way by, and this was just like, yo, this is a one-sided, like, you got the upper hand at one point, but then, like, you were just outmatched, and also you didn't have the support like you needed, because, you know, Norman was so focused on what he was after, he didn't look after you, even though you're supposed to be partners. He's also a reminder, this is a child. You are a full-grown man sending a child out. Yes, he has powers, but you're sending him out there in the world to do this. May would have issues with this. Harry would have issues with this. So it's going to be interesting to see what those conversations are like. Because obviously Peter is like really banged up. Because previously he was like, oh yeah, like I slipped on a banana peel when he was talking to Nico about things. But like he's pretty banged up. He's going to have to try and hide this from May. And Nico's probably going to find out because Harry's probably going to call her about this, now that they're good. So we'll see how that all shakes up and plays out. But yeah, what happens to the 110th now that they kind of like, the base got attacked. They know Mac got what he's got. I wouldn't be too surprised if it ends up being a thing of this is how we get to Tombstone. It's like either Lonnie or Big Donovan go to Octavius for some stuff of like, Octavius is probably fine playing both sides of it because he's like, as long as I can get my tech out there, make money. Once again, don't fully know what his end game is, but maybe we'll find out soon enough. But I'm so curious to see where the aftermath of this is. And like now that Pearl knows about this and she's going to try and pull Lonnie away from all this. Plus Pete was there to see Pearl and Lonnie there. So it's like, there's a lot there to carry over into the next episode, and I'm very, very fascinated to see where it ultimately ends up taking us. But really, that's all I wanted to talk about. Till the next time we meet, be happy, be safe, live life to the fullest, and enjoy it. Good day, and goodbye.